Happy Thanksgiving, Heat Seekers, or our friends in the Great White North say happy Thursday. Welcome to the Fantasy Inferno, your weekly redraft fantasy football show. Tonight, we're going to have some fun. We're going to do some trade analyzing and look at some of the trades that have happened in the market. I know trade deadlines either happened last week or this week or are happening very soon in your leagues. So if you have those trade questions or things that you're trying to do, post them in the comments. We'll get you all taken care of and we'll help you out. Tonight, we're also going to have a little fun. We're going to do some Thanksgiving food tiers at the end of the show for a little bit and see if we can get a little wild. With that being said, you'll see there's a familiar yet not familiar Wednesday night face on the show. Mr. Sullivan, how are you, my friend? Welcome, and I'm glad to see you again.
Oh, my God. It's so good to be here, and it's so good to be here with you and Cody and just to be able to sit back, relax, talk fantasy football, and I have to fight with someone for a whole hour. So it's a treat. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
It is. We are Leone free for a night, so there'll be no
feels so good.
No hot takes that stir up the masses. And we gave Bryce the night off, so he typically does a 5K on Thanksgiving. So we gave him the night off so he gets some rest and carbo load so he can rock and roll. So Mr. Sullivan was kind enough to step in and help us out, so we didn't have to go try to find somebody out in the world to join us.
Happy to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Cody, how are you, sir? How's it going, man?
Doing well. The matching mustaches were not planned, but appreciated, and I'm sure Anthony's going to pop in the comments just to bust your chops a little bit, Sully. We'll see.
Yeah, never really truly free of him, am I?
He's always waiting and watching with his giant eyeball glasses. So like I said, we're going to be talking through some trades. I've gone and scoured the internets for fantasy football trades, and it's not hard to do. I went over to Yahoo, their trade market that they have, lists all the trades that have happened recently. And I grabbed the first, it's like dozen or so, and they all happened today within the last like 10 hours. So we're going to talk about things that are happening recent, and we'll see in a vacuum what that looks like. We don't know specific league formats and all that. So purely in a vacuum, in a redraft format for the rest of the season, things like that. And we'll see what happens. There's some interesting ones in here, package deals and things that I was really surprised about. And another way for me to talk about Courtland Sutton, because there was a Courtland Sutton trade as well. We know how much Courtland Sutton's talked about on this show, but he's not the first trade. The first trade, Pat Freiermuth for Jeudy. In a vacuum, it seems odd. Freiermuth's starting to pick up steam, but still in an offense that is not great. They're kind of all over the place. And Jeudy's in a very similar situation. So Cody, when you look at a trade like this, kind of off the rip, what does your gut tell you? What's the thought?
My gut tells me that the guy who traded Jeudy needed some tight end help, and Freiermuth is kind of under the radar right now as far as rookie tight ends, just because Kyle Pitts exists. If he didn't exist right now, Pat Freiermuth would be on pace for having one of the better rookie tight end seasons almost ever. If you look at his pace, and if he continues his pace, which there's no reason to think he won't. So I think that that's potentially a great trade. And I would assume the guy who traded Jeudy is a contender and needs that tight end help for the playoffs. That's what it on paper and in a vacuum, that's what it would kind of look like to me. A lot of mouths to feed in Denver, and there's a lot of mouths to feed in Pittsburgh as well. But they seem to be going after Freiermuth, and with check down, get the ball out as quick as you can. I think he leads the league in getting the ball out of his hand. Ben Roethlisberger. So I would assume that that's a good trade for those two teams. Again in a vacuum. What do you think, Sully?
I think so too. I just really looked quickly while you were talking and looked at it in terms of PPR. Freiermuth's like 9.3 points per game right now, and Jeudy's 11.3. So it's not a massive difference between the two. And positionally, I think you'd rather have Freiermuth as a tight end than Jeudy as a wide receiver right now. But I think it's so situational. I think you're absolutely right. It clearly looks like the Jeudy fantasy manager needed a tight end, and he went and he got himself a good one. So I'm always a big fan of go and get your guy. If that's the guy you want, that's great. We've had two tight ends finish in the top 12 as rookies since 2010, and Freiermuth right now is tight end 14. So him and Pitts could both do it this year. And you're right. If it wasn't for Kyle Pitts, Pat Freiermuth would be the talk of the town.
And it's interesting, you know, when I pulled up one of my leagues and was just kind of looking at tight end stats, and you know, if you said Pat Freiermuth is ahead of George Kittle in fantasy stats, you know, is higher on the list, people would have thought, wow, Pat Freiermuth's having an amazing season. But he is right now. He's kind of a back end tight end 1, high end tight end 2. Kittle's just having a worse season. I mean, he's ranked 15 where Freiermuth is 14. At least looking at this league's information. But yeah, I mean,
I'm looking at the same thing.
Just because Kittle was hurt, though, like the last 2 games that he's been
and Freiermuth's got a bunch of touchdowns. I mean, Freiermuth's got like 5 or 6. Yeah, 5.
I think he's got 4 straight almost. Does he have 4?
Yeah,
straight?
You look at the last game, the game against the Chargers.
1-0, 2-1, so pretty close. 3 of the last 4.
The game against the Chargers, they just couldn't get the ball in the end zone. They couldn't get the ball in the end zone. They kept trying to force feed it to Claypool. They kept trying to use him on end arounds and then these quick slants. And then finally they're like, screw it, just give it to Freiermuth. Boom. He's in the end zone. So
extension of the run. Like they're definitely wanting to be a running team. Obviously, they're kind of running Najee into the ground a little bit, but you know that's how they want to play football. And that touchdown was an extension of the run. It's just
absolutely
a little bubble screen, get the ball in his hands. He's bigger than everybody else. Run in the end zone. That's basically what that was. And it worked. It was great. So.
I mean, he's looking like baby Gronk with all those touchdowns. I mean, that's very much Gronk-like.
His stock is going up for sure.
Yeah. All right. So next one, another tight end situation. Your Minnesota Vikings, Tyler Conklin, for Arizona Cardinals tight end Zach Ertz. Right now on the year, Conklin is actually tight end 13, so he's ahead of Freiermuth and Kittle. Zach Ertz is tight end 6. Since coming over to Arizona, he's done pretty well. You know, he's had 4 touchdowns since week 6. He's not had. Yeah, he had 2 last week. He's been pretty heavily involved in that offense. 9 targets, 6, 5, 4, 5, 6 since coming over. I mean, he's getting targeted quite a bit. Conklin, on the other hand, has kind of come on more recently. He had a big week 3, and then he kind of sputtered for a couple weeks, then had a couple of double-digit weeks, and it's kind of been up and down. But he's got 388 yards, 3 touchdowns on 38 catches this year. So interesting trade. I guess I don't necessarily understand why you would do this trade either way. That's
kind of my take. I think it's, and I don't want to say garbage in, garbage out. Let's say tight end in, tight end out. I don't think there's much of a differentiation between these two. I'd have to take a look at strength of schedule and things like that. Arizona's on bye this week. Minnesota's already had the bye, so maybe you want Conklin to get an extra game out of him. But yeah, you're talking about 9.5 points versus 9.3 points or something like that per game. Like they're both in that tight end 1 range, but it's all on the touchdown, right? And most tight ends are. It's all touchdown driven. So if the touchdowns dry up, these guys are going to fall off a cliff. But you didn't give up much to get on either side, in my opinion. What do you think, Cody?
Yeah, just I mean, I would prefer the Zach Ertz side. Obviously, he was stuck in kind of purgatory in Philly for a little bit there, and Conklin had an injury, so he missed a game or 2, something like that. But I would rather the Ertz side. So this might just be a savvy move by whoever the owner is. You know, going at or isn't Ertz higher? Isn't he tight end 6? And
Ertz is tight end 6, and I mean, Sully's probably got the point. The bye week is probably what caused this trade to happen. The Ertz owner probably needed tight end, so he traded him for Conklin because he needed somebody.
Yeah, I think it's probably just a savvy move by whoever picked up Ertz. Probably doesn't need a tight end the bye week, and I think he's gonna reap the rewards there later in the season and in the playoffs. I mean, I don't mind Conklin. I own him. I have a couple shares of Conklin. I don't mind him at all. And these, 1 catch away from a touchdown. But Zach Ertz is 1 catch away from like a 20, 30-yard touchdown. He is a little more big play for sure. And he's shown that since he's gotten to Arizona. And I don't think it's an issue with like mouths to feed in Arizona either, because Dan Arnold was pretty good in this offense as well, and that's something they were clearly lacking early on in the season. Go ahead and trade for Zach Ertz, and now once everybody's healthy again, bye week after this bye week, we'll see. I think we'll see Arizona get back to being Arizona, being the 8-0 team or whatever they were at before when they were undefeated. I think we'll see that again in short order. So I think that's a great trade for the Ertz side.
Yep. All right, next trade, another Zach Ertz one. So we got Zach Ertz and Antonio Gibson for Darren Waller and Jerry Jeudy. I mean, so you're going it looks like you're really trying to strengthen up your tight end one, and your depth running back, your second running back probably is getting moved in that deal for that. That's a tough one for me. This one would definitely be more scoring format dependent. Like if this is a tight end premium type thing, sure, I get it. In a vacuum, I don't know. I mean, Gibson's hurt, but he's still performing pretty well, right?
Well, he's not hurt anymore. And a couple weeks ago, when we had some of these types of discussions, I was saying Gibson is a guy that you're going to want to buy for the playoffs. He plays Philadelphia twice in the playoffs, and they're not very good against the run. So I'm going to lean the Ertz and Gibson side, like for reasons that you said earlier about Jeudy. I think Gibson is much more of a start than Jeudy is at their, respective positions. And then Ertz and Waller, Waller's definitely ahead of Ertz, but outside of, I think he's had like 2 big games. Outside of that, he hasn't been, what everybody was hoping that he would be. There's a lot of people out there saying he's tight end 1, ahead of Kelsey, ahead of Kittle. It's just, he's not, and it might be quarterback and it might be offense. That's besides the point at this point in the season. So I'm going to lean the Gibson and Ertz side of it because some of the things I just said about Ertz, their bye week heading into the playoffs. If you're a playoff team, Ertz and Gibson side for me.
Yeah, I think in my mind, the only way I go Waller, Jeudy is if I was strong and deep at running back and Ertz was my only tight end. Going into the playoffs, I don't want to be starting Ertz on the regular because his is more touchdown dependent than Waller. The games that Waller isn't getting a touchdown, which is all of them except
Almost
for 2.
all of them. Yeah.
He's still able to get, around your 10 points or more because he's getting targeted a bunch. So, Ertz is not that. If there's not tight ends involved, he's really not startable.
I think I like the Waller Jeudy side of this.
I'm looking at total points is what I'm looking at.
I get that.
Which side's going to give you more total points?
I'm looking at a running back in 10 games that's been under 10 points 5 times. And had
with the injury,
playing hurt.
He had a big game against Tampa based on 2 touchdowns, and other than that, he did nothing. So I really like Antonio Gibson, and I was crazy high on him coming into the season, and that hasn't come to fruition. But the difference between Waller and Ertz, I just see such a ceiling there in Darren Waller, and I think Jeudy could take off a little bit down the stretch here too. So I agree. You need depth at running back to make this trade. If you're thin at running back, there's no way you can do it. But
Right.
if you have Gibson in like a flex spot, why not? I think it's pretty close. Like I think it's not an outrageous deal on either side. So I can see why you guys would like the other side, but I'm kind of gravitating towards Darren Waller here being the best player in the deal, in my opinion.
Yeah, none of the trades that I saw on any of the trade markets that I looked at today seemed crazy. I mean, it seemed like I could build the case depending on your roster needs. Okay, I get it. The Conklin and Ertz one was the one of all the ones that we're going to talk about tonight where I was like, I don't know that it matters, but the bye week thing was the only thing that really made any sense here. But yeah, Darren Waller is, tight end 2 on the year. He produces even without touchdowns, which is big for a tight end. Normally we're saying, hey, unless you get tight ends, unless you get touchdowns, you're probably not producing well. He can do it without, which is good, which is needed because it's hard to trust a lot of these tight ends that are at the top because they do have those weeks where they disappear. So I get it either way. In a vacuum, I would probably lean the running back because I'm old school mentality, basically is what it comes down to. Running back's always the premium, even though that's not really the case anymore. Wide receiver is the premium in my mind. Like there's so many good wide receivers that I want them all. But I get it. Like
playoffs.
Darren Waller,
That's
Jeudy.
what I'm thinking. I'm thinking playoffs on this trade.
Playoffs.
I think that's a great call for sure. They definitely have a good playoff
Good
schedule.
stretch. All right, next one. Miles Sanders for Marvin Jones and Josh Jacobs. And this hurt my soul when I saw this. I was like, Josh Jacobs trade where you have to add something to get somebody else.
You're not
I love Josh Jacobs. I love Josh Jacobs. Well, I haven't looked at Marvin Jones' stats here recently because I don't own any shares. He's not getting targeted anymore?
No.
Yeah, they're struggling. They're really.
He hasn't
struggling.
I don't think he's had over 30. He might have last week, but prior to last week, he hadn't had over 30 receiving yards in like a month and a half.
Yeah, And I wouldn't say that's entirely his fault either. Like Trevor Lawrence has struggled more than anybody could have predicted. I think I expected, and I do expect more out of Trevor Lawrence than we've seen, and I think everybody does. It's not concerning. I'm not concerned. I'm not one of those people that are dogging Trevor Lawrence and calling him a bust, and there is people doing that, which is insane. But I did expect a lot more, especially with a quality offensive coordinator and, a middle of the road offensive line. They're not, good, but they're not bad either. So
they're not Chicago.
And they got a run game. Like James Robinson is a very good running back, in my opinion. And he had some weapons there, especially when they added Dan Arnold. He should not be struggling the way he is. He was actually a guy that I was looking at, trading for, thinking he would get it figured out maybe after the bye, that sort of thing. And he would be a fantasy asset. He's not. He hasn't been, and he won't be this year. So, yeah, it's weird. It's really weird what's going on in Jacksonville. It's crazy that they have 2 wins. But
and he's still getting targeted quite a bit. 6, 6, 5, 8 over the last 4 weeks. It's just not turning into anything.
I don't know what
5 of 8, 3 of 5, 2 of 6, 4 of 6. He's catching most of them except for the 1 week against the Colts, which is weird because the Colts defense, you can pass on them, and it didn't work for him.
Yeah, it depends where you line up. Hey, the Colts give up a boatload of passing yards in the slot, and they're kind of decent on the outside. So if they kept Jones on the outside, that kind of makes sense. But this one's easy for me. This is Miles Sanders by a landslide.
Yeah,
when I look at the Eagles' schedule, like the toughest ranked defense against the run they play the rest of the season is 21st, and that's Washington. They play them twice. Like, I think Sanders. I think I did a little bit of buy-sell homework before this show, and Miles Sanders was on my buy list just because of the schedule that the Eagles have down the stretch. It's laughable. Giants, Jets on bye, Washington, the Giants, and then Washington again. That's awesome.
It hurts my soul to think about that because I love Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs. You guys talked about him last week. I was watching, and they just don't know how to use their running backs there. Like it's sad. Vegas should be a lot better than they are, but they're misusing him. I don't know why they don't throw him the football more and just feature him more. Him and Waller and Renfro, they could have a really nice offense. But
yeah, I agree. I don't think Derek Carr is that bad that they need to look this bad. Like I just don't. And like I said the other week there, that Kansas City game I think is indicative of the rest of their season. And then look at the game against my Bengals; they look just as bad, maybe worse at home against a bad running defense too. Like, well, not bad, but I would say middle of the road. But they give up points to running backs. But yeah, it's kind of wild that. And do people know how old Josh Jacobs is? He's 23. Like, he's not an old. Like, he's been in the league a couple of years, but he's 23 years old. He should be a feature back, and it is pretty concerning. But I would take the Sanders side in this too, and Sanders as well as Antonio Gibson are 2 guys that I've been a habitual fader of, and it's worked out for me. I just don't see them as being, number 1 workhorse running backs. I do not. And so far I've been right through 3 years in their career each, or 3 for Sanders, 2 for Gibson, whatever it is. So far I've been right, and I'm staying on that until I'm proven wrong. But yeah, in this case, I'm taking the Sanders side.
Yeah, looking at the snap counts from last week, it's interesting to see how close Sanders and Scott were. 36 snaps for Sanders, 29 for Boston Scott.
Jordan Howard got 10 carries last week too, even before he exited that game.
It looks like he got 13 total snaps and 10 carries. I don't know. I would probably lean Sanders just because I think he gives you the better ceiling. Like Sully said, rest of the season probably gives you the better opportunity for fantasy production. As much as I love Josh Jacobs, you can't trust him on a weekly basis. Is he going to lead the team in touches? I don't know. I have no idea.
He might, but the play calling is part of the problem too, right? Like it's a touches. Not all touches are created equally, and the situations that they put Jacobs in are almost laughable at times.
Yeah.
Especially since Gruden left.
Yeah, and of these 3, Sanders has the highest floor and ceiling. So
Yep.
Pretty easy trade.
All right, so we got a big boy one here. Adam Thielen, Carson Wentz, and Darrell Henderson for Cooper and Monty. This is an interesting one because I don't On a week-to-week basis, I mean, obviously we know Cooper Kupp's leading this thing, but I don't think him and Adam Thielen are insanely far apart in terms of value. I think Thielen's kind of a back-end wide receiver one on a weekly basis. Kupp's a high-end wide receiver one. Henderson and Monty this season, I think, are pretty similar when it comes to what I would expect from them each week. So then you add Carson Wentz in, who I don't care. Like he was doing well, and then he's game managing fine, which is fine. But I didn't know which side I liked better. Like I feel like Kupp and Monty is the side I'd want, just because I know Kupp is leading the league and probably not going to stop leading the league this year.
Yeah, realistically, like Wentz is a throw-in pretty much for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm assuming that's just a depth piece for whoever got that side, right? They just needed another quarterback, and he's been looking pretty good. So that's all that looks like to me. So take that out. It's Darrell Henderson and Thielen for Kupp and Montgomery. What do you think, Sully?
Cooper Kupp has almost 10 points per game more than Adam Thielen. He has almost 100 more fantasy points in the same number of games played this year. There's a big difference between Cooper Kupp and Adam Thielen, as much as I love Adam Thielen. Henderson's nice, but Monty's coming on, and he's coming on strong. He had the most percentage of touches and snaps last week for the Bears. I think he played 94% of their snaps, and he's going to continue because, we were talking about a pre-show, that team can't do anything but run the football. And even with all of those snaps that he played, Khalil Herbert only had 1 carry last week. So it's all Monty all the time until the wheels fall off for him. He was going guns a-blazing before he got hurt, and he seems to be going good when he came back. The only way this trade makes any sense for me whatsoever is by chance it's a super flex league. But in a 1 QB league, Kupp and Montgomery for me all day, please.
It's funny. It's funny how far ahead Cooper Kupp is than Thielen, but Thielen is still wide receiver 10. Just kind of looking at the stats, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
but Kupp's on pace.
Cooper Kupp is
Kupp's on pace to break the all-time fantasy record, though, right? Like he is blowing the doors off of everything. We've never had a wide receiver finish with 400 fantasy points, and he's on pace with the 17th game for almost 430. So it's bonkers.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I didn't want to go and dog Thielen on you before you did. It's 100%, and it's not even close. Cooper Kupp and Montgomery for me, especially considering Montgomery's playoff schedule: Minnesota, Seattle, and the Giants. That's very juicy for a guy who should be fully healthy again. And yeah, he is the best player in that offense, and it's not close at all. So this trade for me is not even close, and I would 1,000,000% smash accept if I'm, the Kupp and Montgomery side. This is kind of a little bit of a fleece job, unless it's super flex. Okay, I could definitely see that being. It changes pretty much everything, but in any other format, it's a bit of a fleece job, if you ask me.
Yeah, even in Superflex, I think I might want Kupp and Montgomery if I had other quarterbacks.
Yeah, if you have two,
especially because it's redraft. Like in a redraft conversation, I mean, the rest of the season, Kupp and Monty are going to outscore potentially all these guys.
Yeah, and if you're trading Cooper Kupp, like if your deadline is coming up and you're looking to trade Cooper Kupp, even in a redraft, you should get an absolute haul.
But there's almost like no scenario where you would trade Cooper Kupp in a redraft.
Right.
Because you should be contending for playoffs pretty much for sure, unless the rest of your team is absolutely poop their pants. And then why would you trade them? In what world would you trade your best player? You just don't if you're a playoff team. I have a Cooper
The only
Kupp.
scenario I think where it makes sense is if you were ravaged by injury at running back and you also had Calvin Ridley and you had some other weird scenarios on your team. So you kind of got Cooper Kupp and nothing. If that's the case, your team's probably pretty bad. So there's no point trading him either. If you were going to do that trade, you should have done it probably a month or so ago. But he's a hard guy to trade.
Exactly. So right this second at trade deadline, there's almost no scenario where it makes sense to trade Cooper Kupp.
No. So
whoever did this, hopefully you're not listening. Sorry, but horrible trade.
Yeah, definitely wild. It is funny to look at, as you guys are talking, I'm just kind of looking at the top 12 wide receivers. I mean, and Tyreek Hill's not far behind. He's like 20, 30-ish points behind Cooper Kupp. We got 2 Minnesota receivers in the top 10, Jamar Chase, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs is a top 10 receiver, Anthony, if you're watching. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Debo. I mean, that kind of rounds out the 12. Oh, and DeVonta Adams is in there because we like to forget about him. It's interesting to see how far Cooper Kupp is away from all of these guys. But then when you dig into it and look kind of at the granular level, the dude's being targeted like 10 to 13 times a game. It's like
had his career high not last week. They were on by the week before his career high in targets and catches or something.
Yeah, 11 for
catches.
11. Well, he had 11 catches 2 weeks in a row, 11 for 95 and 11 for 122.
And I think he had 14 targets last week, or sort of the last time they played, which is
like it's crazy to think about.
The separation is very like Christian McCaffrey-esque. Maybe not quite to the point of Christian McCaffrey, but when McCaffrey is rolling, he's, a wide receiver 1 and an RB 1, and he's, 100 points more than the next RB, something like that. And that's what Cooper Kupp's doing right now at the wide receiver position. He's just killing it. He's absolutely killing it. So
yeah, he outscored his last year's total, I think 2 weeks ago or something. Like it's
just think about if an injury pops up for this guy, teams are done. Teams are done. I'm just saying, because I have some Cooper Kupp shares.
Every Cooper Kupp owner is going to come watch this show or stop.
I have Cooper Kupp, and I'm dominating.
You just shut that dirty mouth.
But so
don't even. Are you new?
I was having this conversation with one of the folks on Twitter. Basically, because the guy, he's trying to decide whether or not is there a point where you have to trade Cooper Kupp because the value's never going to get higher. And I'm like, he's 28. I wouldn't worry about it. Like, unless your team is completely rebuilding and you have nothing, I wouldn't be in any hurry to trade the guy. Yeah, in a redraft format, I'm not moving him, even if I am, a losing team. I mean, in one redraft, a Lions fan league, redraft league that I joined up this year, my team is terrible. It's like 2-something. I was the guy that drafted. Yeah, it is. I was the guy that drafted Allen Robinson as my wide receiver 1, and I mean, all just terrible things. It is now, but it wasn't.
It turns out it was, but in theory, it wasn't.
So I thought I was going to kind of, because my team's not terrible. I got Lamar Jackson and Kamara, and I'm good at tight end. It's not terrible. I figured maybe I make one good move. So last week I traded James Robinson for Michael Carter and Amari Cooper. Like, son of I can't win one.
Trade. That was a good trade.
Yeah, I thought it worked out well for me. Then one's on IR and the other one's probably not far behind. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's all that was.
I hate redraft fantasy football because of that, because it doesn't matter. You either drafted great and you dominate, or you try to figure out how to make your team better, and it's an uphill.
It's always nice in redraft if you did have a bad draft and you kind of screwed up a little bit, that you're not digging out of it for 3 or 4 years. You're just like, see ya.
Rinse and repeat. Yeah, I know. Yeah. That's the thing I do love about redraft, but also hate at the same time, because then you very quickly realize if your team's toast or not. All right, so the next trade, not as blockbuster, but we got a James Conner for Russell Wilson and Hunter Henry. Guessing one QB, guessing the guy that had Wilson and Henry needed running back help. And James Conner, I'll have to pull up, but I'm pretty sure he's pushed his way into the RB1 conversation.
He's got to be close. He leads the league in touchdowns, doesn't he?
He's number 8. So he's RB8 on the season.
That's insane.
555 yards rushing, 12 touchdowns. He's number 2 in the league in touchdowns behind Jonathan Taylor.
Oh yeah, 5 touchdowns.
I forgot about JT.
2, 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row where he's had at least one touchdown. 2 of those weeks he's had 2 touchdowns. So in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, in the last 9 weeks, he's only had 1 week where he didn't get a touchdown.
I mean, Chase Edmonds will be back. I don't know if that's gonna like really realistically hurt James Conner kind of at all. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not an extreme amount. That's an interesting trade. Like, that's one so far. That's the one that I would have to see some sort of context.
Yeah.
Like that's the one that really is like, there must have been something more going on there to have to make that trade.
I mean, other than the first 2 weeks of the season, Chase Edmonds was around, I think, up until week 6-ish. I mean, and he scored in 3 of those weeks. I think 3 of 6. 3 of 6. He got 1 or actually 2 touchdowns, 1. So I don't know that Chase Edmonds affects him a whole lot. I mean, it does affect him some, obviously.
I think Edmonds only has 1 touchdown this season too.
Yeah.
So
Wasn't
I think,
Edmonds more involved in the passing game though? I mean, when it
right,
came
and
to
that's
the,
right. That's just where I was going to go if I get this eye to stop watering. I don't know what's going on, but
I know my nose is running.
Connor has benefited from the fact that A is the goal line back and B, they're not running Kyler at the goal line anymore, right? So when Kyler is playing. So this trade to me looks like a guy needed a running back and the other guy had an extra quarterback and a tight end kicking along. So he threw them away for James Conner. You know, Russell Wilson's got a ton of question marks around him right now. We don't really know what's going on there. And Hunter Henry is the most touchdown dependent tight end in football this season. Good for him that he's getting them, but if he doesn't get them, he's 2 for 6 or 3 for 8 or nothing that's really, you know, that special.
He's
So
getting you 5 points if you're lucky. Yeah.
he is, right? Like it's crazy, but James Conner's a 0 RB fan's dream, right? And that's me. I hate running backs and I always wait. And I got quite a few shares of James Conner, so I'm happy with him this year, but I think I'd lean James Conner here, but I think Cody's right. You need context on this one. We don't know what these rosters look like.
Yeah, I would lean the James Conner in a vacuum as well. This seems like maybe the person, the Russell Wilson owner maybe drafted like Russell Wilson and Jalen Hurts in like the 5th and 6th rounds or something like that. And, you know, now he's finally making that trade, which you usually always do. You trade one of them eventually. It's just, I don't believe in that. You know, I don't do that myself in drafts, but I know some people do. They'll draft 2 quarterbacks. And then if there's an injury, there you go, or you trade one, sort of a thing. So yeah, I mean, this could be a great trade for both.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe the guy picked Cam up off the wire because Russ was hurt, right? And boom, now all of a sudden he's got Cam running for 30 points a game or whatever, and Russ is struggling. So yeah, it's a tough one to figure out, but
it is. Yeah.
Interesting. Though.
I thought it was when I saw it, I was like, I really don't know which side I like more. I could make a case for both, but yeah, I'd lean James Conner as well. All right, so CH and Darnell Mooney for Matt Stafford and Mark Ingram. This was the ugliest trade of the ones that I saw today. I was like, what just happened?
Huh.
So,
go ahead, Sully.
I think it's CEH and Mooney just because it's a starting running back and a starting wide receiver. I'm assuming it's a 1 QB league, so Stafford is not as valuable as he would be, and Ingram is nice, but nothing special. So I think it's CEH and Mooney, but I'm not really in love with either side of this trade, to be totally honest.
Yeah, it's ugly. It's an ugly trade regardless, but I think it's actually a pretty horrible trade for the Stafford Ingram side. I think it's CH and Mooney, and it's really not close. You're getting a starting running back versus a handcuff and a wide receiver that's looking very good. Doesn't matter what the quarterback situation kind of looks like. He's got a juicy playoff schedule. Matt Stafford in a 1 QB league is not as valuable as, you know, so realistically, this is kind of CH and Mooney for Stafford. I mean, you could probably find a handcuff that's just as nice to have as Ingram. Ingram might not even play this week. And if he does, he's hurt the Buffalo Bills. So, you know, and then Kamara will be back soon. Maybe obviously not this week, but probably next week. So yeah, it's really not close at all for me. It's CH and Mooney, but it's kind of an ugly trade. I'm sure the Stafford Ingram owner is loving it though.
I bet.
I'm just going to continue to tell people, like we tell people every Wednesday, Deonta Foreman, and I'll even throw in Dontrell Hilliard. Grab both of those guys if you need running back help. Don't waste your time on a Mark
guys. I'm mad about this Deonta Foreman thing.
I was talking about him weeks ago.
I pick him up in my guillotine league last week because I picked up Aaron Jones the week before, and I'm up against it, and I got DeVonta on bye last week, so I tune in to this fantastic show, and you guys sell me on DeVonta Foreman, and I bought a turd. He was brutal. How did he not perform against Houston?
I thought you said Freeman, Devontae Freeman.
Oh, Freeman's nice, but
Deontay Foreman. Okay.
Yeah, I don't understand what happened to Foreman against Houston. How did that happen?
Give him another shot.
And where the hell did Dante Hilliard come from?
Well, I mean, he's a pass catching running back. I mean, we saw that in Cleveland when he filled in the Kareem Hunt.
I didn't even know he was on their roster.
No, he was. Well, they signed him to the practice squad recently.
Right.
And they elevated him because Deonta Foreman is not a pass catching running back. They're not used typically that way. He's your between the tackles banger, goal line guy, all that stuff, where Hilliard's a bit more of the pass catching back.
And
I guess
that
since they
was-
sent
that
AP
was,
back in too.
that was game script. Like that, I don't think too many people expected
Game was
the
stupid.
Texans to go up 19-0 on the Titans.
the
Especially
Titans
Rod
had a
Taylor,
better-
baby.
Tennessee.
Ty,
The-
Rod
The
Taylor.
Titans had a better chance in that one if they did run the football.
I know,
Because
yeah. So
Tannehill kept throwing picks.
that's
was
what
a
I
dumb game.
expected them to do
That was
was to run the
that was a
ball.
really
and,
dumb game.
You know, yeah, that was a bad game all around. And I think they gave 9 carries to Adrian Peterson and then cut him right after. So,
That's what I'm saying. Foreman and Hilliard. If you need running back help, I would grab those 2 guys and just keep an eye on. I'm not saying to start them just yet, because they have the Patriots this week, and that's a terrible idea because the Patriots will shut somebody down. But those guys are guys you're going to want to keep an eye on. I mean, if you needed to start one in a pinch, Hilliard, because they're going to probably need to throw the ball a bunch. But
Yep.
that's a tough one.
I'm just busting you guys chops. I was all on board with it. I agree with you guys 100%. It just didn't happen. So
No.
that happens more times than we care to admit.
Yeah, he got 1 pass. He got one. What did he get? 1 reception, like 7 or 8 carries or something. It was. I mean,
I had red
it's the
zone.
Tyrod Taylor effect, baby.
Yeah, I had red zone on, and I had to turn it to the game because I had to see what the heck was going on. Because all of a sudden I'm like, how is Houston winning this game? And then I watched it, and it was just an absolute downpour, and it was brutal. And I think Houston had 147 yards of offense in that game.
Yeah, their running backs, they had like 32 carries to their running backs and averaged like 1.4 yards a carry or something like that. It was abysmal. It was
But their starting field position was like their opponent's 20-yard line almost the full first half. So
yeah, and you know who loved that game? David Culley. Guaranteed, he was loving every minute of it. I don't know why, but he loves those games like that. It looks like just from what I've seen of that team. Yeah.
And then they cut poor Philip Lindsay.
They cut him? I didn't even hear that.
Yeah. He landed in Miami.
And Miami picked him up.
How did all that get by me? Wow. That's embarrassing.
That's a muddy looking backfield too now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at this point in the season, is Philip Lindsay really going to add any value to that Miami backfield? I mean, he's got to learn the offense. He's got to.
I don't know. I guess, but what does a running back really have to learn? If I give you the football, run forward. Like I understand there's blocking schemes and stuff, but the most droppable position would be running back, wouldn't it? Just run.
No, I mean, yes, you have to understand. Checkdowns at the line, things like that.
Sure.
Audibles, not checkdowns. Audibles at the line. Formations. He's got to pick up the mic, blitzers, things like that. I mean, there's things he has to learn that he probably. I mean, he's been in the league for a few years. I'm sure he has a clue, but
it's just the terminology. And then blocking schemes, which is again, like you just said, it's pretty easy. That guy that's behind the line, he's gonna run at you.
Don't let him hit Tua.
Yeah, that guy wants to tackle you. Run away.
Just terminology. Realistically, I think. I mean, what little bit I do know, which is not very much.
That stuff.
But I think that's all it would be. Would be terminology.
When I played football, I was never a running back, so it looked a lot easier than it probably is.
I never played football a day in my life.
Me neither.
You're not missing out. My knees still hurt, so
I messed up playing a little bit on the ice and hockey in my life instead. So.
I always wanted to play hockey. My mom just couldn't afford it. That's why I went football.
We'll get together. You teach me how to play football. I'll teach you how to play hockey.
I always love hockey. Being from the Metro Detroit area, hockey was my bag.
Hockey town.
All right. So last trade. We got one more we'll get to before we have some silly times. Courtland Sutton, the man, the myth, the 4-year deal legend, and Freiermuth for OBJ and DeVonta Smith. This is kind of in my mind, it's Sutton for Smith type trade. Like OBJ does nothing for me right now because I'm probably the person that's the most uninterested OBJ person there is. Like I have no interest.
Oh no, you're not.
No, you have got competition for that title.
I think I seem to have been the only one, on either of these shows that dogs on OBJ, and I have been for years. And like I said the other week, it's not his fault. It's not his fault. And it's, it's not him. It's not, he's none of that. It's just the health. It's just, you can't go through those injuries and play at that level. And I just think that, his head and his reactions and the things that he knows that he, thinks he can do, I don't think his body's going to be able to do it anymore. That's just where I'm at with OBJ. I have been since he tore his ACL last year. That's basically was the killer for him. And not because it's a torn ACL, but because he completely shattered that same leg, 2 years prior.
Yeah.
So I don't not like OBJ. I don't want people to think I hate OBJ or I'm a hater. None of that. I actually think that could have been one of the best wide receivers ever. Could have been. And just it is what it is. Injuries happen. And I think that we're just going to see a continued, slide. And everybody's name value is still going to be there. People are still going to be drafting them, overdrafting them, I should say. And it is what it is. But give me the Sutton and Freiermuth side on this one. I'll make it short and sweet after dogging on
That's
OBJ
right.
for as long as I did. But yeah, I can't do it with OBJ. I can't do it with the OBJ talk anymore. It's just ridiculous a little bit. Sometimes you're just going to have to face the facts.
It's name value at this point.
At some point, you're going to have to face the music.
That point hasn't come yet. I still believe in OBJ. I think that he's a number 2 wide receiver in that offense, and he's going to have to get up to speed. And is he going to be OBJ making the one-handed spectacular catches on Monday Night Football? No, those days are gone. But can OBJ do what Robert Woods did? Yeah, I think he can. So I look at this trade as a wide receiver 2 and a rookie tight end for a wide receiver 2 and a rookie wide receiver who is trending towards being a wide receiver 2, back end wide receiver 1 when you look at strength of schedule the rest of the way. Rest of the season, OBJ and DeVonta Smith score more points than Courtland Sutton and Pat Freiermuth, in my opinion. So that's why I would take this trade. In any other format, in a dynasty league or anything else, I would not. But rest of the season, I think OBJ can be just fine. And DeVonta Smith, we talked about Philly's schedule. It's absolutely amazing. Courtland Sutton's struggling a little bit, and Freiermuth has to score touchdowns because he's a tight end. I like both those pieces. I like all 4 of these players. But to me, I think OBJ and Smith score more points at the end of the season, and that's what this is all about. So I'll take that side.
That point total is heavily weighted towards DeVonta Smith, I think. But
Possibly.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong
either. It's very possible.
I'm just saying it's very heavily weighted towards DeVonta Smith, I think.
Well,
and that might make with this trade worth it too, though. To be
how
honest.
about this? What does Courtland Sutton, you think, average rest of season? Give him 13 points a game?
Hey, Brad and I talk about Courtland Sutton almost every week.
So what is he right now?
I like Tim Patrick in that offense.
Courtland Sutton is averaging 12 points a game. So give him that. Pat Freiermuth is averaging 10 points a game. Give him that. So that's 22 points. DeVonta Smith could do that on his own some of these weeks coming up.
But you're more likely to be starting Courtland Sutton and Pat Freiermuth than you are both OBJ and DeVonta Smith, right?
Yeah, I guess so. That's a really good point too. But I don't know if I would trade for 2 wide receivers unless I needed them both.
I'm not saying this is a bad trade at all, even if it ends up being just for DeVonta Smith, to be honest with you, because I've been touting DeVonta Smith all I can on this show because, his playoff schedule is cake. So
it really is.
Yeah. So I like, it's not a bad trade, even if it was Courtland Sutton and Freiermuth for just DeVonta Smith. That's not horrible. So
I might be on the other side of that one, but I understand what you're saying.
It's close, right? For me, it's close with just those pieces. And then you throw in OBJ. Yeah, it's fine on either side, I think. But I don't know.
I still think OBJ can get you 10 points a game in that offense with that quarterback.
My worry
about 4 balls for 60 yards to do that, right?
Well, my only worry with OBJ, and it's probably more so because I just don't know how quickly he picks up. Well, I do. I'm not the fan. The funniest thing is I never owned OBJ shares when he was good, and I somehow got a few throw-in shares when he was terrible with Cleveland. So now I'm just like, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Wasn't terrible in Cleveland. He just wasn't as good.
Heartbroken. Heart is broken.
He had wide receiver 2 seasons in Cleveland. He wasn't terrible.
So how quickly he picks up this playbook. Is he valuable for the team, for the NFL team come playoff time? Probably. Is he valuable for fantasy owners come playoff time? I don't know.
I don't either. I don't know what the Rams schedule in the playoffs looks like off the top of my head. Do you take anything from Sean McVay saying he expects OBJ to have a big week or to be a big part of their offense going forward? Is that just speak? Like McVay isn't really one of those speak guys, is he?
He's not going to have. I don't think he's going to have a big week in Green Bay. Like, I really just don't. It's going to be pretty chilly there, I feel like. Not that, I mean, he's been playing in Cleveland, which is pretty cold too. I don't think he's going to have a big week this week. I could see him doing well against Jacksonville, and they have a pretty good schedule in the playoffs. They play Seattle, at Minnesota, and then at Baltimore.
That's not bad.
That's not bad.
Baltimore's not great, but Minnesota and Seattle's been playing better, but Minnesota's terrible in their secondary.
Yeah, and Baltimore's banged up. They were coming into the season in the secondary, and it hasn't exactly gotten much better. So it's not a bad schedule for OBJ come playoff time. I wouldn't think this week. That's a weird week for McVay to try to that's a lot to put that on Odell Beckham this week. I don't think that was a smart move. If he did say that publicly, I didn't see it, but
I might be misquoting him. I probably am, but he did come out and say something about OBJ having either a big finish to the season or a big week or expected big things from him or something along those lines.
Probably rest of season. Like I think he would be smart enough not to put that on this week on the road in a cold Green Bay. I just don't think that would be a smart move to throw that on your, wide receiver that just got on your team sort of thing. He's, there's a lot of talk and a lot of kind of moving parts around that whole situation. So either way, it's, I don't, going back to the trade, I really don't hate it either way. And you can make a case for anything and anything when you talk.
I was trying to find injury reports for the Packers to see what that secondary looked like, because I thought that was part of the issue you're running into is the secondary is banged up. Yeah, Kevin King.
I think Jair Alexander's out.
He's still on IR.
Yeah, he's still on IR. But I know
Douglas is playing well for them.
They're playing really well on defense. I'm actually more concerned about Cooper Kupp because their linebackers have been playing so well. I think they can cover him kind of with a linebacker and then a safety over the top. That's challenging for the Rams, but that's probably a game where Henderson has to run the ball well for them to play well.
Yeah,
Kevin King is the only one.
It's in Green Bay at this point in this season. You have to run the ball. You have to, and so does Green Bay, though. But they've got a guy by the name of
On an amazing side note, it makes me feel a little bit more excited about tomorrow. I see the Bears. Obviously we know Justin Fields is out, Akeem Hicks is out, Damian Williams is out, Allen Robinson's doubtful, Eddie Jackson's questionable, Mario Edwards, Tayshaun Gibson, Marquise Goodwin. I was like,
who do they have?
I think
maybe Detroit does get a win.
Most of those guys are playing, except for like Hicks, Robinson, Fields.
Hicks is Demir Bird going to get some targets or what?
Who? Sorry,
Demir Bird
from Chicago.
He hasn't done a thing all year.
I mean, Detroit. The guys that are out are people that haven't really mattered. I guess Trey Flowers matters, but Trinity Benson, Vitae, AJ Parker.
You got your offensive line got healthy last week, didn't it?
Well, we got Taylor Decker back, which was huge.
Right.
Him and Panay on the outsides are just disgusting.
I'm not saying Vitae's good. I'm just saying he was playing on that offensive line.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we basically started rolling out 6 offensive linemen basically last week against Pittsburgh, and it was working. I mean, I was like, geez, forget the tight ends. Just grab another offensive lineman, although that offensive lineman is Matt Nelson. He's out.
Lions are the only winless team I know that has only lost one game in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, was it them in Washington or whatever? What was that stat
line? They had a tie and a bye, right?
Yeah.
The last 3 weeks.
Only teams to not lose in the month of November or something like that because they had a bye and a tie.
That is pretty funny.
Like that are just silly.
Fun stuff, man.
I love those stats because they have no context and it doesn't matter at all.
They're absolutely useless, but they're fun for me.
All right.
Find that quote.
Oh, the McVay one?
Yeah.
I heard him say something on an interview I was listening to this morning, but I don't remember what it was. I mean, it wouldn't surprise. Like McVay's a guy that's rah. Like he talks everybody up. Like everybody on his team is going to be amazing every week. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's like, man, OBJ. Yeah, I'm going to get him some Chucky Campbell soup and we're going to win.
Yeah, Sean McVay reveals big Odell Beckham Jr. plan for Week 12.
See that's I mean, he said it. It is what it is. But I wouldn't expect much.
As long as he doesn't mess with my Cooper Kupp shares, I don't care. Like,
Maybe he's going to jump out of a cake or something. Maybe that's the surprise.
Jump out of the turkey.
There you go.
they're gonna dress
Sean
him up.
McVay expects Odell Beckham Jr. to play a big role this week.
Yeah, they're gonna put him in a Green Bay jersey and be a spy on the other side.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm not saying Green Bay revenge game for not signing him.
Yeah, I'm not saying he can't do 40 yards and a touchdown or something like that.
Yeah, good enough, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I guess is that a big week? I don't know. Whatever. It's good enough, and it'll help your team get a win. So
he was getting one target and 6 yards in Cleveland. So yeah, I'd say that's a big week.
So what's the chance? I was listening to the McAfee show interview with Aaron Rodgers where he talked about how him and Odell have been friends for a while and they chit-chatted.
Did he show his feet?
No, this was last week's show.
Rodgers is nuts.
He's an eclectic dude. But my question is, if he doesn't get targeted a bunch or just performs well, does he just stay in Green Bay? Just say, you know what, Dad, call these guys, get me out of this deal. I'm going to stay here.
Who?
I don't know. I think Odell gets painted poorly. I think the worst thing the man has done in his career is fight a kicking net, to be totally honest. We touched on diva wide receivers last night a little bit. All the good ones are nuts, right? They're all crazy. They all want the ball. They're all bitching and moaning and complaining. And I get worried about my wide receivers when they don't say anything and they just, I wish they'd throw the ball to me.
Yeah, he certainly hasn't been a diva, but it seems like the wide receivers, they get there once they become the best wide receiver in the game. Then they start to AB happened to Antonio Brown, Michael Thomas, same thing. It's just it's once they get in there. Didn't he get there?
I think Michael a lot Thomas? Of it is they're getting more.
No, didn't Odell get there at one point though? In year 2 and 3 in his career before the injuries started breaking his legs and all those other things.
He might have maybe he was starting to get there and maybe that's why people think he's some sort of diva or something like that. And then he shattered his leg in week 2 or something like that. So maybe he was just getting there and he didn't quite get a chance.
Don't get me wrong. I don't think having your dad put a 20-minute Instagram video together was a good idea. I also don't think his dad put that video together. Dad, can I have the password to your account so I can send this out tomorrow? Thanks. But his dad wasn't wrong. Well, if you watch that video, wasn't wrong.
I struggle with that idea of the diva receiver. I think it's more they're getting more attention, so their personality is showing out. I think you are who you are. That's just his attitude. Maybe. I mean, because look at some of these other guys. Cooper Kupp, obviously, top receiver in the league right now. I've never heard anything negative. Can't imagine him being a diva.
What could he possibly complain about?
Right.
My hands are sore. That's about the only complaint.
I think he also knows that he's dependent. See Cooper Kupp out of
he knows who butters his bread.
Exactly.
He's the peanut butter.
He knows that he's not the best, the most athletic, the fastest. No. And he knows for a fact that he is none of those things. So it's a little. I think it's a little easier for him.
But then you look at some of the other guys at the top. Debo. I don't hear a lot of stuff coming out of Debo camp, Devo-wise. Nope. Justin Jefferson, same way. Jamar Chase, I think, is a diva. We just haven't seen it yet. Just watching his actions on the field. It's not a bad thing. He's got a swagger about him when you watch him.
I think that's the better word. Would be swagger.
Chris Godwin, you don't hear anything there. Mike Evans, very similar. I mean, Diggs, we know, diva. Adam Thielen, you don't hear a lot there. Keenan Allen, you don't hear a lot there. He's just unfortunately had some crazy
Keenan Allen
in his career.
I think it was a year or so ago, Keenan Allen went on Twitter and said, okay, enough of all this garbage. I'm the best wide receiver in football. I don't care. It was something along those lines. He went after Michael Thomas. He went after a couple other guys. So, no, Keenan Allen isn't a, pound his chest and yell and scream, but he's going to stand up for himself. How about Megatron when he was in Detroit? Did he ever have any issues? He just went out and beat the hell out of everybody, right?
What about a guy that doesn't get much talk here is Nuke Hopkins? He was the best wide receiver in the game for 3 years, at least 4 years.
Yeah, and you didn't hear much out of him.
Yeah,
who was his teammate in Houston? Who was really, really, really good
Andre
before he got
Johnson?
there? Yeah. Both those guys had absolute trash for quarterbacks for the longest time, right? And just went out and played.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you show up and just do your job. I mean, and Andre Johnson's a legend,
Yeah.
That guy's, I think he's in the Hall of Fame conversation this year.
Yeah, I think he is too.
I just got, or they just posted the the selections. They've narrowed
That's a
it
good
down.
point, Matt. I think you're right. For the most part, they are.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. There's
Even
so many.
So look at a guy like Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco, whatever you want to call him. I prefer to call him Chad Johnson.
So do I, but whatever.
He was one of the best wide receivers in the game and got zero notoriety for it. He talked a lot of trash. You might call him, I don't know why you'd call him a diva, because he certainly wasn't a diva. He would do exactly what he said he was going to do, which was unreal. It was amazing.
It's pretty funny because last night I'm like, he wasn't that good. And then I pulled his numbers up and I went, never mind. Yes, he was.
There was
like 4 or 5 straight 1,400-yard seasons. I was like, never mind. He's damn good.
John Titna throwing the ball too for a bit
exactly.
of that. Yeah.
But yeah, there's some, right? Like
see, there you go, right there, Ocho Cinco, like
right.
That's the whole Ocho Cinco thing. That's the thing that I think I can't shake with him. It's like I don't even know what that is. Like obviously it's his number, but I just didn't get it for the longest time. No, there's been some really good. Jerry Rice, the best ever. I don't think the guy ever said boo, right? Larry Fitzgerald, same thing, never said boo.
And I was just pulling up the notification about the 2022 Hall of Fame Modern Era finalists. Look at these wide receivers: Anquan Bolden, Devin Hester. I don't know, he's not. It's kick returner that he's really getting going for.
Next, he deserves to be in there.
He does for his kick returning, absolutely, yeah. Andre Johnson, Torrey Holt, Steve Smith. That's a questionable one because that dude was very outspoken, not in a negative way, just outspoken.
Still is. Isn't Steve Smith the one that told Baker that he's basically a piece of garbage?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's very honest
on NFL network,
like live television,
biggest NFL channel, just
totally.
Right. Steve Tasker, although I think it's more special teams than wide receiver, if I remember correctly. He was from Buffalo.
Bill,
yeah. Hines Ward, Reggie Wayne. I mean, so many guys on this list.
Yes.
Although the one that I sentimentally wish would get in, Ricky Waters from the 49ers. His career was cut short due to injury, but man, he was so good when he was on the field. He played for the 49ers and then the Eagles and the Seahawks. He played for...
I remember him more as a Seahawk, I think.
Yeah, he started with the 49ers. He was with them from 92 to 94.
I thought he was a running back.
He is.
Oh, okay. I thought we were talking wide receiver.
I brought him up because I hadn't actually looked through the list.
You're just changing the narrative.
Yeah, I just flipped it a little bit there. There's some fun ones on the list.
I do too, Facebook user. I do too. Put that up there on the screen and screenshot that. I could not agree.
Hold on. I gotta
screenshot that some bitch.
All right.
That's gonna be my Twitter background from now on, I think.
Leone is gonna be sad.
Save as. We're keeping that screenshot, and we're just gonna drop that in some conversations and see what see what happens.
Very nice. Very nice.
Steve Smith called Curtis Samuel a bust this week, and he said he's overpaid. Yeah, Steve.
He kind of is, and he kind of is.
But that's why I love Steve Smith, because his takes aren't bad, and he's very opinionated about it. But he can back it up. He's very intelligent. And
very much how he played the game. He was toughest, pound for pound, toughest player in the NFL.
I watched his highlight tape today, and I know, watch a guy based on his highlight tape, but I don't care. It was stupid impressive the way he was busting tackles and shaking guys. And
5'9",
5'10", yeah, like
5'9", in a time when you wouldn't even get drafted at 5'9".
Right, and his quarterbacks were Jake Delhomme and Cam Newton most of his career, right?
And Jake Delhomme had one good year, I think the Super Bowl year that they went. That was it.
It's not like he had Hall of Fame quarterback play.
No, but not a lot of guys do, right? Like you look across the landscape of the league right now, there's so many mediocre and less quarterbacks, but
if we see an expansion, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get.
I sure hope we don't. We don't have enough quarterbacks, and we don't have enough quality quarterbacks, and we don't have enough quality head coaches to add teams to this league.
But 32 is a solid number. Like I think all leagues should get up to the point where they're kind of at 32.
I think they are, aren't they?
I think all of them are now. Yeah.
How many does the NBA got?
Hockey just got the 32nd with Seattle.
Oh, yeah, Seattle. Right.
Yeah. Baseball's there, isn't it?
But they're trying to up it because of the schedule, because of the 18 games. They want to make it, or they want to make it 18 games and then make it 36 teams, is allegedly rumblings is what I've been hearing.
And that'll be with a European division or something I've heard as well.
No, Canada, like maybe Toronto has a team. San
Canada.
Antonio.
St. Louis
Whatever,
needs to get a team back.
Calgary
They need to
getting one?
give St. Louis another
Oh.
team.
Think we get a new stadium here in Calgary if we got a freaking NFL team instead of that bag of garbage stadium we have here?
It's too cold for your NFL here.
I'm about to say it's a little. That's true frozen tundra.
Hey, we got domes. We're fine.
Is that what is this like a Minnesota situation? Collapsing domes?
It's worse than Minnesota, but it's close. Actually, that's
Yeah.
a fair comparison.
BC
T.O. should have been or should be a first balloter.
If he wasn't a dick, he would have been.
Yeah, his attitude is what's going to keep him for a while. Larry Fitz will be a first balloter because of his attitude. Like, I mean, he
he's
made it to a
NFL
Super Bowl,
humanitarian
obviously. Yeah,
and won the Walter Payton. He won the Walter Payton Award for NFL humanitarian and all those other things.
I agree.
I think he will.
But they should both be in first ballot because of their skill, talent, and stats.
Isn't T.O. in?
I think he is now, actually, isn't he?
Isn't he the guy who went and did his Hall of Fame speech somewhere else?
Yeah, I think
he did make it.
Yeah,
like he's in. I don't know if he was in
2018, but I don't think he was the first balloter.
He was another one of the best wide receivers ever played the game.
Because
I looked up his numbers last night, and he had a 1,000-yard season at the age of 37.
Oh, yeah. Oh gosh, that was so funny.
And then I went down a rabbit hole, and then I looked at Jerry Rice, who at the age of 40 had like a 1,200-yard, 8-touchdown season.
Yeah, it took 3 years for him to get into the Hall of Fame because he retired in 2010, and you have to be 5 years out. So it took him 3 years to get in.
I think Fitz is a slam dunk first ballot. People forget how really, really good he was in his early days in his career.
No question, first ballot.
And he's second all time in receiving yards behind Rice, right? Like, I don't know how he doesn't go in.
If they could break the rules and put him in earlier, they would for Larry.
Well, the NHL would. So
that's it, folks.
That's it.
It is. It's 10:30 already. We ran out of time.
What happened to turkey?
Yeah, you guys call that Thursday, and I can't imagine either of you are eating turkey tomorrow.
No, I don't have anything planned.
There you go. So no turkey tomorrow, and that's okay. Canadians don't celebrate Thanksgiving. Well, they do. It's last month, so
we're just a little sooner.
You guys like to be ahead of the schedule. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that.
Man, Wednesdays are fun.
Do I need to pop the screenshot up about Cody over Leone?
Sure.
So hopefully you guys do enjoy your Thursday, whether it's Thanksgiving for you Americans or Thursday for you everybody else, because there are folks from other countries outside of Canada that watch us. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. I know it's been a bit of a quiet night. I know a lot of y'all have stuff going on. Hopefully Thursday treats y'all well. If you have questions, drop them in the comments below. As always, find us on Discord, on Twitter, Facebook, blah, 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 blah. Anytime you see me, I say all those places. Find us all those places.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Be safe and have fun.
And we'll see you next
week. Enjoy the football.
Yeah. Other than that Detroit-Chicago.
That first game is going to be an ugly one. See ya.
People lose their appetite.